Hey everyone, welcome back. So, if you're a focused learner looking to efficiently decode the fascinating quirks of language, well, you're in exactly the right place for today's explainer. Today, we're looking at a single Portuguese word that acts as the ultimate linguistic Swiss Army knife. That word is confusão. And as we go through this, we're going to see how mastering this one specific vocabulary word unlocks an entire spectrum of human experience. But here's the catch. It's entirely dependent on how and where it's used.
Just picture this for a second. You're walking down a vibrant street, maybe in Lisbon or Sao Paulo, just enjoying the day, and suddenly you hear someone yell this word out loud, confusão. What do? Should you just, roll your eyes in annoyance at a minor inconvenience? Or should you immediately turn around and run for cover? It's a completely genuine question because, remarkably, this single word covers both of those extreme scenarios and several more in between.
Okay, let's dive into this. At its core, confusão is a wonderfully versatile word. But to use it correctly, context is absolutely everything. You literally cannot just memorize a direct one-to-one English translation and call it a day. Its meaning shifts entirely depending on the situation. Our source material breaks this down into 4 distinct categories of use, and we're going to walk through each one so you can see exactly how this shape-shifting word operates out there in the wild.
So, let's pull out the very first tool in our linguistic kit, meaning 1. Everyday chaos and disorder.
This first meaning is probably the broadest, most environmental use of the word. You use this when everything around you is just completely disorganized. It's that overwhelming, frustrating feeling of a system just not working the way it's supposed to. Here's a perfect example straight from our source material. Listen to how this sounds.
A confusão no trânsito hoje está terrível.
When you say this, you're expressing a shared, everyday frustration. You're looking out at a sea of cars that aren't moving, horns are honking, and the environment is just a total mess.
And that brilliantly illustrates our first English equivalent. In this context, confusão simply translates to chaos or disorder, specifically traffic chaos. There's no personal conflict here, nobody is targeting you specifically, it's just an external environment that's deeply frustrating. If you're stuck on the highway going absolutely nowhere fast, you are sitting right in the middle of a confusão. Now, we take a step up the escalation ladder, meaning 2, miscommunications and mix-ups.
We're moving away from a chaotic physical environment now and entering a more interpersonal space. This is still a relatively mild usage of the word, but it shifts the focus entirely onto human error and crossed wires. Let's look at the Portuguese phrase for this context. Foi uma confusão com as informações do evento. The word is exactly the same, but the situation is completely shifted. We're no longer talking about cars honking on a street. We're talking about schedules, emails, or maybe a printed flyer that has a typo on it.
So, the proper translation here is that there was a mix-up or a misunderstanding with the event information. What's absolutely crucial to grasp here is the emotional temperature. Nobody is furious yet, right? No one's throwing a punch. It's merely an administrative error, a logistical tangle. It's that moment you realize you showed up at 7 p.m. for a dinner that actually started at 8 p.m. That harmless little error, that is also a confusão.
Now, what's really wild is the incredible tonal whiplash this word is capable of. Notice the massive gap between a harmless mix-up, like an email going to the spam folder, and a literal brawl at a party. The fact that the exact same word is used to describe both an email typo and a physical riot is what makes learning this so fascinating. Which brings us to the absolute peak of our escalation arc, meaning 3 fights and altercations.
We've moved from bad traffic to a calendar mistake to actual, literal physical danger. This is the most extreme external event this word covers. Check out the Portuguese example provided for this intense scenario. A confusão na festa acabou com a chegada da polícia. Notice how the surrounding words immediately set the stakes. Festa means party, and polícia means, well, police. The context clues are practically shouting at you that this is not a minor scheduling error anymore.
Here's the translation. The fight at the party ended when the police arrived. There's kind of a dark humor in the extreme stakes here. If someone runs up to you and uses the word confusão while pointing at a group of people and the police are rushing in, it absolutely means a physical altercation or a fight. This is the exact moment when you choose that run for cover option we talked about at the very beginning of this explainer. Let's see how this builds into our final category, meaning 4, internal mental uncertainty. We are going to do a complete 180-degree turn here. We're shifting away from the blaring police sirens and external threats and moving into a quiet, entirely internal experience.
The source material gives us this great example phrase, Ela ficou em confusão sobre o que fazer. The tone here is completely different from the previous scenarios. It's softer, it's personal. We aren't looking at a crowd of people anymore, we're looking at a single individual trying to make a decision.
She was confused about what to do. In this final use case, the chaos isn't out there on the highway and it isn't at a noisy party. The chaos is entirely inside someone's mind. It's that paralyzing feeling of mental uncertainty when you have way too many options or you just don't understand something. It's a mental state rather than a physical event.
So we've seen the 4 very different faces of this single word. Let's move into mastering the context.
Because knowing the definitions is really only half the battle. Knowing how to actively listen for context clues is what actually makes you fluent. Think about how these 4 scenarios stack up against each other. For chaos, we look for environmental clues, like traffic. For a mix-up, administrative clues, like event info. For a fight, we listen for high-stakes clues, like police or parties. And for a mental state, we look for internal, personal clues about decision-making. Seeing this all laid out proves just how much heavy lifting the surrounding sentence does. The word itself is just an empty vessel until the situation fills it with meaning.
And this brings us right back to why this deeply matters to you as a learner. Mastering this word isn't just about passing a vocabulary quiz. It's practically a linguistic survival skill. When you step into a new language environment, your ability to instantly assess whether you're looking at a mild traffic jam or if you should be running from a literal fight makes all the difference in the world.
The beauty of language is that it forces us to pay attention to the world around us. You can't just hear the words. You have to read the room. So I'll leave you with this final thought. As you continue your learning journey, how will you rely on context to survive your very next Confusão? Keep decoding, keep looking for those clues, and thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I'll see you next time.